evening and welcome to Monday Night Politics Meet the Candidates, presented by the Dallas Examiner. I'm Molly Finch Belt, publisher of the Dallas Examiner. The Dallas Examiner has presented Monday Night Politics for over 12 consecutive years prior to elections. The Dallas Examiner does not endorse candidates. We seek to inform the community so that when they go to the polls, they are informed voters. All candidates who provide their email addresses on their applications when they file for office are invited to participate in Monday Night Politics. Monday Night Politics is not a debate, it's a forum designed to inform the community about the candidates' qualifications, their platform, etc. We could not present Monday Night Politics without our sponsors, who are nonprofit organizations, and they do not endorse either. In addition to Monday Night Politics, our website, www.dallasexaminer.com, has a section for voter education. Here you'll find current information about voting. Visit www.dallasexaminer.com. I would be remiss if I didn't mention two people who have worked with Monday Night Politics Meet the Candidates behind the scenes for over 12 years. The first person is Robin Jimenez, Vice President of Production and Editorial at the Dallas Examiner. The other person is Christy Thomas, Monday Night Politics Advisory Committee. We are happy tonight to have as our moderator Charles O'Neill. Charles is president of the Texas Association of African American Chambers of Commerce, and he was the first editor for the Dallas Examiner when the newspaper was founded by my father in 1986. Thank you for attending the forum tonight.
And good evening, and welcome again to tonight's edition of Monday Night Politics, brought to you by the Dallas Examiner. We have an action-packed and a tight schedule for tonight because we've had to add in a candidate from last week's forum, candidate for Attorney General. So this week we have with us today, and we'll start with our candidates for Lieutenant Governor. We'll have then Attorney General candidate, and then we've got three judicial races: District Judge, 255th District, 282nd District, and 204th District. And we'll cap off the evening with our candidates for Governor of the state of Texas. So without further ado, we have tonight with us as candidates for the office of Lieutenant Governor, we have Ms. Carla Braley and Mr. Mike Collier. As we were noted earlier today, you have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then we'll have 2 minutes for responses as well. So without further ado, Ms. Braley, you're on. 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Hello, audience. I am so glad to be with you and so delighted that you all have taken upon yourself to remain connected in the world of politics, particularly in the state of Texas. I am Carla Braley, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. I am a mother, I'm an educator, I am a long-time committed Democrat, and more so than anything, I am a fearless fighter for all Texans. My entire life has been dedicated to public service. Over the past 3.5 years, I served as the vice chair of the Texas Democratic Party, traveling across the state, Zooming, flying, whatever we had to do to ensure that we elected local candidates to make sure that they are serving in a way that we are pushing for democratic values. And that's what I believe is at stake right now, democracy. We have leadership that have failed us from the left to the right. We have leadership that has not provided guidance in a way that is going to restore justice in our state. I really believe that our rights are on the line, and I could no longer stand on the sidelines. For me, I absolutely believe that we must address education so that we have the highest quality, inclusive education that moves towards a pipeline for our workforce. And then we must address health care. It is absolutely essential that we not only expand health care, but we make sure that premiums are more affordable. And lastly, while I can discuss many more priorities, we must deal with the priorities of protecting our rights in this state. I am Carla Braley, running for Lieutenant Governor to ensure that we have a Texas for tomorrow. Texas is our home, and I want to join you to make sure that we have one Texas united.
Thank you very much. Mr. Collier.
Guess we gotta clean it together.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Mike Collier, candidate for Texas Lieutenant Governor. Carl, it's nice to see you. We Zoom all over the state. It's nice to see you in person. I ran against Stan Patrick for Lieutenant Governor last time, and I came close, and I'm very passionate that the next Lieutenant Governor must be a Democrat. We have so many problems in this state, and particularly in the black community, and so much of it comes down to money. Now, in my professional life, I'm an accountant, and when I think about solving the inequity in public education, which is profound and wrong, morally wrong. We have schools that are quite successful, but we have schools that need help. And the question is always, where are you going to get the money to do it? Expanding Medicaid. We have to expand Medicaid. We must also be creating jobs and creating economic opportunity for all Texans, not just for Texans in some communities, but for all Texans. And then that leads to a discussion around infrastructure, which is so important. Financial infrastructure so that people can get to those jobs. Grocery stores and food and the rest. We are not investing properly in every community in this state. We're not investing in black communities. And as a financial professional, as an accountant, I know where the money is. And being successful as Lieutenant Governor and achieving these objectives, it's so much about making sure that we argue the case and find the money and put the money to work where it's really going to help people. We're such a prosperous state, but not everybody is enjoying equally in that prosperity. And we must protect the right to vote, and the reason why that's related is that the current Lieutenant Governor is not doing his job, and you're angry, and you ought to be angry. And that's why he doesn't want you to vote. And so that's why we must protect the right to vote and go to the polls and change the Lieutenant Governor and then start investing properly in all communities in the state. And I'm very passionate about it. My name is Mike Collier, very honored to be here this evening, candidate for Texas Lieutenant Governor.
Mr. Collier, stay there, and you'll take the first question.
Okay.
The Lieutenant Governor's office is characterized as the most powerful political seat in the state of Texas. Ms. Braley said that we've suffered from failed leadership. Kind of outline, if you will, some of the ways that powerful seat has failed the state of Texas.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the Lieutenant Governor is
And you'll have that
truly one of the most, if not the most powerful position in the state because Lieutenant Governor sets the agenda for the legislature. So all matters related to policy, all matters related to the budget, start with the legislature, and the Lieutenant Governor drives that discussion. Our current incumbent, that Ms. Braley and I are working so hard to defeat, sets the wrong agenda. Our current Lieutenant Governor does not set the right agenda. He is not allowing the legislature to work on funding public education. He has prevented the legislature from expanding Medicaid. He's done nothing to fix the grid, and that cost a lot of people their lives, and it cost a lot of money to fix their homes. He's doing nothing about investing in all of our communities, such as the black community. Instead, what he's doing, and there's so many other problems, instead what he's doing is finding incendiary issues that make people angry and pit one Texan against another. Some call it culture wars. And he is not doing the job. And the Lieutenant Governor, is the most powerful position in this state, must do his job, which is why this Lieutenant Governor, the incumbent, must go. And we must elect a new Lieutenant Governor, and it ought to be a Democrat.
Thank you. Same question to you, Ms. Braley. And the question was, in an office as powerful as is the Lieutenant Governor's office in the state of Texas, you mentioned in your opening that we suffer from failed leadership in that position.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for the question. You know, the Lieutenant Governor for a number of years has been noted as being the most powerful position in the state of Texas, primarily because not only does the lieutenant governor serve in a capacity when the governor is not available, one. But two, the lieutenant governor sets the agenda. And three, more importantly than anything, the lieutenant governor has the power to ensure that we have the most prominent, most well-read leaders to be appointed to each of the committees. And that is where so many of the decisions are made in terms of where a bill will actually reside and how that bill will go throughout the legislation. And so the legislator. And so we have to make sure that we do not play politics with people's lives, and that is what we're seeing in the state of Texas, that we're choosing to be divisive rather than to join and make sure we have leaders that are appointed to these positions that are actually dealing with issues like the power grid, to make sure that we have the proper oversight, but not just oversight, but also plan, and how we plan to do that, and how we plan to be transparent with the information that is dispersed to Texans. But more so than anything, the lieutenant governor can ensure that our rights are protected and that the funding that we receive in schools, that it is enhanced. I was listening to one of the constituents to say that it's been 21 years since staff in the teaching area have received a promotion or increase in their cost of living. And so those are the things that we absolutely must change. And instead of going for cultural wars, we have to make sure that we put people at the center. And that is what the lieutenant governor has the ability to be able to do.
Okay, so the next question to you, and then to you, Mr. Collier, is among the almost incendiary kinds of legislation that made its way through this past legislative session, probably among the most damaging to a black community, is gerrymandering. How do we fix that once that genie is out of the bottle, so to speak? We've got districts now drawn that will actually put a cap on the number of black elected representatives that we can elect from the state, either House and or Senate.
Well, I believe that it's several things that we can do. One, we have to vote. I know that sounds like it's not the best response, but the reality is we have to vote to make sure that we retain our vote. The reality is what is happening in the state of Texas is not new. If we understand the historical nature in which many of politicians that have not necessarily been on the side, and I'm going to say in this sense, communities of color, that they have worked to suppress the representation primarily in the black community. I would say black and brown communities, because what's at stake, it makes sure that we are going to have a curriculum that is going to deal with equity. We're going to have housing to make sure that proper loans, not only proper loans, but also that people can maintain them. And so what is at stake is not only voting, but we have to make sure that we bring others to the table in terms of stakeholders. We have to make sure that these discussions are happening at the grassroots level. Oftentimes, community as well as faith leaders are not brought to the table, but having a clear-cut understanding of what is happening on the ground. But I tell you, for me, Charles, at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we exercise our vote, even though we know that there is a precedent. At one point or another, we have to make up our mind that by any means necessary, we will vote, because our vote is our voice. And that is how we'll be able to overturn a lot of these divisive and extremist agenda that is being moved forward, because this is only the beginning. I really believe that we are at an anti-democratic movement, and it's happening right here in the state of Texas. And we have a lieutenant governor that has stated over and over that part of the problems of Texas is dealing with the black community.
Outstanding. Yes, sir. Thank you.
There's no question that the legislature redrew the congressional districts to make sure that black, brown, and Asian Texans do not have a say in government. It's morally reprehensible. It's racist. And there's no doubt and even Senator Kelseliger from Amarillo recently testified that it was done for that purpose. A Republican senator testified in court of law that it was done for that purpose. It's wrong. It's anti-democratic. I despise what they've done. Now, here's what we need to do to settle this. 11 other states have moved to an independent redistricting model where instead of the legislature drawing congressional districts for the sole purpose of retaining power, ignoring what it does to the voice of black and brown voters, instead you have a separate, independent, non-political commission drawing district lines so that everybody's vote and everybody's voice matters. 11 other states have done it. Texas must do it too. Only one elected official can make this happen, and that's the lieutenant governor, because the lieutenant governor can set the agenda, can get the vote out of the legislature, put it up to a vote by Texans, and then Texas will go to an independent redistricting model. Not only will that save democracy in Texas and give you a voice, which is essential, but the rest of the country will watch this. We have a huge problem with this, not just in Texas, but in many, many parts of the country where Republicans are trying to take away your vote and take away your voice, and we can't stand for that. And if Texas, when we win the battle for an independent redistricting commission, because we have a Democrat lieutenant governor who drives the point home and succeeds, many other states will follow. We will get credit for saving democracy, and that is so essential and a very, very important part of my agenda. Thank you.
And the next question to you,
Yes, please.
should you be successful in being elected? We've talked health care, we've talked education, we've talked voter suppression. What are the top 3 priorities you would make sure that the next legislature will address?
Yeah, what are the top 3 priorities of the next legislature? We've got to fix the grid because it's not working, and without a grid, we are in danger. We came very close in the state of Texas of having a complete electrical blackout, and if that happens, it would take weeks to restore it. We had many hundreds of Texans die. We had a lot of pipes burst. We had a lot of houses damaged. It cost an enormous amount of money. We have to fix the grid. We must expand Medicaid. That's a good deal. We should do that because people are working as hard as they can, the best job they can find. It's not their fault that they can't afford health care. The cost of health care has just gone up much more rapidly than wages, and so we have to expand Medicaid. We need to make sure that our education, if we don't get education right, we're not going to get anything right. I think we have a moral obligation to all of the young people in this state, not just the sons and daughters of the well-to-do, but everyone, to create a level playing field to make sure that everybody gets a great education, public education. And in black communities in particular, those funding formulas have been designed to starve your schools. I love teachers. I applaud teachers for working so hard and doing their best, but the state's not there for them, and that's not right. So we must change the funding formulas to make sure we get money into the public schools in black communities where it's needed, and that's how we're going to take this state to where we want to go morally.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Brady.
Well, I wish I could say that it was really just 3 priorities, but the reality is we are in a very bad place in this state. But there is hope. One of the most important things that I absolutely believe that we have to address is education. Education is our pipeline in many ways, and it should not be the pipeline to prison, but it should be the pipeline to enhancing the workforce of tomorrow. We have to make sure that students do not receive an education based on their zip code, and that we have equity in education in a way that they have exposure to various types of opportunities to go into, whether it's vocational education or to extend their education to 4-year universities. We have to make sure that that is afforded to students, whether they're in urban, suburban, or rural areas. Also, in terms of health care, we have to make sure that we are not leaving money on the table, because that is what's happening in the state of Texas. We have over $10 million that are there that we're not taking advantage of. We have to make sure that everyone has access to affordable health care regardless of where they are, and that even when people are working every day, they have to make sure that they actually have affordable premiums. We have to make sure that people are not necessarily robbing Peter to pay Paul after working to ensure that they can be have insurance. Then, we can talk about the power grid even as a resident of Texas, I am like so many other Texans, I was also impacted by the power grid. We have to make sure that we winterize everything that needs to happen, but we're also continue to plan. And last, I absolutely think that we have to address gun violence. At the end of the day, what we are facing as Texans, we can say no. We can have more conservative gun safety issues so that we can make sure that we are embracing the Second Amendment, but at the same time, we're making sure that we're saving lives in the state of Texas.
So, and unfortunately, we are pressed up against this clock, but we're going to use your closing statement for 2 minutes. But one of the questions that came in through Facebook was, so you can roll that into your closing statement, what will each candidate do specifically to fix the issues that they've identified? So.
Thank you for the question. One, I think it is absolutely necessary that we have the right leaders appointed to the committees. We cannot get around that. The reality is that whoever is elected, and I'm hoping that you will elect Carla Braley as your next lieutenant governor, that we will be able to work across the aisle, because that is how decisions are made. We're going to have civility in the Senate in the way that we have not had in quite some time. And so we're going to have to make sure that decisions that are made, they are made with people at the center. How we're going to do that? One, we need to rescind what has moved forward in terms of voting rights. We need to rescind what has moved forward in terms of the heartbeat bill that does not take in consideration a woman's right to choose. Gun safety, we know absolutely that there are things that we can do to make sure we have red flag alerts, that we cannot just have where any and everyone can carry a gun. We know that that has not proven to be the safest route in our state and also in other states. We have to be willing to look at best practices and mimic what some other states are doing. And lastly, we have to make sure that that we have an educational system that prepares students to make sure that they have a future in this state and that we have a workforce that they are trained to do. We can do those things in a way also that we have students and teachers that are equipped and trained to make sure that we have a very competitive virtual system that we can improve. I am Carla Braley. I am hoping that you work with me so that we can make sure that we have One Texans United, and you join with me that we can make a very historical mark by you electing the first African-American female to lead our state. And I am hoping that we can work together to ensure that our democracy continues and it is not at stake under this current leadership that we have. I'm Carla Braley, running for Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you very much. Scott?
Well, the things that Carla Braley and I talked about tonight are shared by the majority of Texans. When we talk about the importance of expanding Medicaid, when we talk about funding public education so that it's fair for all communities, when we talk about fixing the grid, when we talk about investing in communities, Texans actually want this. The problem is we aren't getting it out of the legislature. And the reason why the legislature isn't acting in a way that's in our best interest and your best interest is because the lieutenant governor blocks these things. He does not want these things to happen. So when we elect a Democrat lieutenant governor, then we'll organize the Senate and we'll begin to make progress on these things. You'll have committee assignments so that we do the right thing and expand Medicaid and fund public education and do the rest. Texans want change in the worst way, and they want a Democrat, in my opinion, they want a Democrat lieutenant governor so that we can drive and make these changes. It'll make such a big difference in people's lives. You know, when you think about the name Texas is actually friend. It means friend. It means ally. And where is the compassion? Where is the empathy? Where is the sense of community? It's gone, and it needs to come back. A lieutenant governor who shares our values, who has a passion for every community, who's willing to make the case and make the investment so that we solve these problems will make a huge difference in the state. The lieutenant governor has that kind of power. My name is Mike Collier. I'm here humbly asking for your support and for your vote to be that next lieutenant governor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for our candidates for Lieutenant Governor, Ms. Carla Braley and Mr. Mike Collier. Thank you so much for attending tonight.
Thank you.
We'll take a very short break, and then we'll hear from Mr. Lee Merritt, our candidate for Attorney General. And welcome back to Monday Night Politics. Tonight we have with us one of the three Democratic candidates for Attorney General for the state of Texas. We have Mr. Lee Merritt, who was originally scheduled to be with us on last week and was called away. But we want to say welcome to Mr. Merritt. Thank you so much for attending tonight. We'll start with a 2-minute opening statement. Talk to the camera. All right.
Hello, my name is Lee Merritt, and I am humbly asking for your help becoming the next Attorney General for the great state of Texas. I'm familiar to the Dallas community because this is where I started my civil rights practice. It was from here in Dallas that I began to represent families who had their rights violated by state actors, by corporate discrimination, and by other forms of hatred. One of the first major cases that I took in this region was the case of 15-year-old Jordan Edwards. And we were able to help secure one of the first convictions of a police officer in Dallas County in almost 50 years. We went on to represent the family of Ahmaud Arbery and Botham Jean and Tatiana Jefferson, and honestly, far too many names. The way I like to discuss it sometimes is through an analogy about finding babies in the river. There's a story of a young man who saw a bunch of baby in the river, so he hopped in the river and pulled the baby out and returned it to the mother standing on the shore. But before long, he heard the cry of yet another baby, and he hopped back into the river, and he received the praise of the community for repeating his heroics over and over again, until finally he asked, well, who's throwing all our babies in the river? Dallas, I'm asking you, who is throwing all our babies in the river? I've worked not only as a constitutional attorney, but as an organizer, working for the Texas Organizing Project, helping to start the Grassroots Law Project, where we elect progressive prosecutors through Dallas County, Bexar County, Travis County, all throughout the state of Texas, so that we could push forward a human-based agenda with practical, common-sense solutions for things like the war on drugs, for the mental health crisis, for a unique attack on our public schools and on women's rights. I'm the attorney for this moment to stand up for the people of Texas, and I'm asking for your help to become your next Texas Attorney General. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Merritt, you've referenced or referred to the Attorney General's office as the people's lawyer.
That's right.
How has the current Attorney General failed to be the people's attorney?
Well, Mr. Paxton seems to be interested in only serving one client, one person, that's the person of Donald Trump. And in many ways, he has acted as his personal attorney, filing lawsuits against the state of Georgia, for example, to overturn the outcome of their election. That was failing the people of Texas. He stamped that embarrassing lawsuit on behalf of the people of Texas. He's gone after Texas women, trying to enforce a ridiculous statute that flies in the face of basic principles of law, such as standing, and basic constitutional principles well settled by Roe v. Wade. Now, there's an argument that Roe v. Wade is under attack and it may fall, but until it does, it is the law of the land and it's the responsibility of the Attorney General's office to uphold it. As a former school teacher, one area in particular that has bothered me about the current Texas Attorney General is his unique assault on public schools and local controls over both our academics and our safety in the classroom. This Attorney General has filed dozens of lawsuits against school districts across the country in an attempt to undermine the elected officials, the school board representatives, the superintendents, our teachers and our educators, making our classrooms a political playground. I have 5 children, all under the age of 12, in our public schools here in Texas, and it is our responsibility as parents and my responsibility as the people's lawyers to stand up and fight for them.
And the last two, you referenced it, in fact, the last 2 attorneys general of the state of Texas, where the number of times that they sued the federal government as a badge of honor. So how is that, how can you reconcile that to the failure of those attorneys general to be the lawyers for the state of Texas?
Well, it sometimes seems like the Republican Party has forgotten that we are one member in the United States of America. Now, I think that Texas is the best state in the country, but we are still a part of this country. And as such, there are certain minimal rights that we are expected to protect. And they have seen it as a badge of courage that they've repeatedly filed suit against our Department of Justice. The Republican Party has taken the Attorney General's role since the last time a Democrat has held that position and expanded it tremendously. The growth of the Texas Attorney General office to an office that has a budget of $1.26 billion, over 3,000 employees, and a unique Solicitor General position that just started when Cornyn was the Attorney General. And when Paxton was the Attorney General, Governor Paxton was the Attorney General, he appointed Ted Cruz as the Solicitor General, and he gave him this charge. He says, look over the state, and if you can find conservative values to fight for, then I'm encouraging you, using taxpayer dollars, to do it. We need a charge in the opposite direction. We need to hire talented, elite Solicitor Generals who can take on the assault on voting rights that's occurring across the country, who can take on the human rights crisis at our border to ensure that there are translators, judges, attorneys there, social workers there to meet that crisis instead of a buildup of militarization that does none of us any good. We need an attorney general who will stand up for some of the highest property taxes in the country, someone who is a consumer protector and is dedicating his craft to fighting for the things that actually impact the people of Texas.
Our candidate for Lieutenant Governor, who was with us earlier, addressed the question of how they would use that seat to ensure our voting rights are preserved. How will you approach that as the state's Attorney General?
Sure. And in answering the question on how I plan to protect our voting rights, some of it has to do with working with the DOJ, as you just mentioned. Now, my client is always going to be the people of Texas, and it's my responsibility to advocate not for what's best nationally, but what's best for the people of Texas. And those two things do not have to be diametrically opposed. The Department of Justice has filed lawsuit against the state of Texas because of a clearly racist and gerrymandered map. That is not a suit that I would oppose them on. It is obvious that map is a violation of the Voting Rights Act. It's a violation of basic tenets of fairness, and I would take them up on looking for ways for Texas to improve. One of my good friends and classmates from Morehouse College, Chris Hollins, fought, and one of my brothers in Omega Psi Phi fought to make voting easier in Harris County. He brought 24-hour polling locations. He brought drive-through voting locations. He made mail-in ballots easier to access. And the Republican legislator did all that they could to roll those protections away. Well, I've learned as a civil rights practitioner that those accommodations that Chris Hollins fought so hard for in Harris County serve more than anybody else Americans with disabilities. And under the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act, our state actors are required to make reasonable accommodations for the least of those among us. And this is how this plays out. Because ADA, individual citizens with disabilities, exist in a protected class, you can't ask whether or not they belong to that class when they go to the polls. That means under federal law, it is our responsibility to make reasonable accommodations for those with disabilities, but you can't ask them if they have disabilities, so you make those available for all of us. When I pursue litigation on behalf of the people of Texas, I will be asserting the protections offered through the federal government under the ADA, which I believe will expand our access to voting.
So we'll do this final question and roll your closing. I know you have another appointment that you have to make it to. So quite obviously, you will be the first black Attorney General of the state of Texas running as a Democrat. And we've had this Republican-controlled state government for years. How will you assure all of Texas that you'll be the Attorney General, the lawyer for all of Texas, and get accomplished the things that are very, very, very personally important to Texas's black community?
Absolutely. So as a Texan and as a black man, I am unapologetically black, and I have a responsibility from my position as the people's lawyer in my private practice, and certainly as the people's lawyer for the state of Texas, to take on issues with urgency. And so when we begin to talk about the deadliest police culture in the modern world, or the most incarcerated nation in human history, that's something that impacts us all. Now, just because it disproportionately impacts black and brown citizens doesn't mean that it should not be urgent for other members of the state of Texas. And so, no, I will not back down from my lifelong fight to end the era of mass incarceration and end the war on drugs that really played out as a war on black and brown communities. But I've demonstrated over and over again through my practice that I can work across the aisle. I was one of the few people without cameras present that went into the Trump White House and discussed executive orders necessary to ensure that people with disabilities, for example, are not met with violence. Right now, they're 16 times more likely to be encountered with violence. I knew that they didn't necessarily care about my skin color in that White House, so I brought to them first responders, firefighters, police chiefs who had had their loved ones killed or brutalized by first responders. I went on to make that argument before the United States Senate. I continue to make that argument before the Biden DOJ, who this month will be releasing additional executive orders in lieu that will help protect Texans in lieu of their failure to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. My career has been built in locations not like Philadelphia or California with large bastions of progressives, but I've built my careers in the Hunt counties, in the Bell counties, in Tarrant counties. I've fought hard and worked across the aisle to represent all Texans, and I will continue to do that as the next Texas Attorney General.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your attendance tonight. Mr. Lee Mayer, candidate for Attorney General of the state of Texas. Thank you, sir. All right, thank you. Good evening again, and welcome back to Monday Night Politics. Tonight, in this segment, we have candidates for District Court number 255. We have the incumbent, Judge Kim Cooks, and the challenger, Ms. Vonda Bailey. So thank you so much for your attendance here tonight. We're going to go in alphabetical order. So B before C, Ms. Bailey, 2 minutes for an open statement. Remember to address the cyber audience.
Thank you. Is this on?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Thank you, and good evening to everyone. My name is Vonda Bailey. I am the change needed in the 255th court. I am a wife, a mother, a Dallas native. I have a 2-year-old, a rambunctious 2-year-old at that, and a 12-year-old. And I have been a practicing family law attorney for the past 8 years. Families get justice for the things that they need through inclusion and equity. Inclusion is absolutely necessary. This includes people of who suffer from mental health disorders, as well as children and indigent persons. Equity is necessary, and it is not a one-case-fits-all type deal. Once elected, I will ensure that I am partnering with mental health professionals to ensure that people that suffer from dyslexia or schizophrenia or any other type of mental health disorder receive services that they need in order to interpret and understand a court order, because it reduces the future risk of violation, as well as make mandatory counseling for individuals who are in divorce cases as well as child custody cases, and make that mandatory for those children. A clothing closet for indigent litigants who may not look presentable while they're in court. This boosts the morale of the court as well as the confidence of the individual. These are changes that should have occurred in Dallas County courts on yesterday. Mending the broken families begins with the reunification of the families. I am asking for your support and your vote to help bring these changes to the 255th District Court. Thank you. Vote Vonda.
Thank you so much. Judge Cooks.
Good evening. I'm Judge Kim Cooks. I'm your presiding judge of the 255th Family Court in Dallas County, and I'm also your presiding judge of the Protective Order Court in Dallas County. I am seeking your support in re-election to the 3rd term in this court. When I ran in 2013, I made the promise that I would mend the broken families, and that's exactly what I've done. So by mending the broken families in family court, it deals with child support, child custody, CPS, and divorce cases. And with CPS cases, I made sure that children would not go into foster care, but first go to family members, church members, and friends. Because statistics show that that minimizes the trauma, the permanent trauma that children will have as adults. And that would make a reoccurring cycle for children to be in CPS care and for them to not parent well. So we want to end that trauma by allowing them to be with family members and friends. Also, the law provides in family court that I have the ability to incarcerate someone in the Dallas County Jail for non-payment of child support, as well as not following court orders, such as allowing visitation. But instead, I don't believe the taxpayers should have to pay for someone to be in jail for non-payment of child support. Instead, we have the Choices program that allows them to have jobs get job skills, and still be involved in their children's lives, because ultimately they need to be financially responsible and be able to still walk their children to school. I am asking for your support in re-election. I'm Judge Kim Cooks for Mending the Broken Families.
You stay there, Judge Cooks, for the next question, and then it'll go to you, Ms. Bailey. And this is not directly related to your court specifically, but we saw an interesting dynamic in the last legislature, if you will. And I think, if I opine, I'd say it was because of the election of so many black female judges in both Dallas and Harris counties, and we saw the legislature it got animated over changing the qualifications for who gets to run for judge and who gets to sit as a judge. Can you address that for us?
Absolutely. So in 2014, when there was an influx of judges who got elected in Dallas County, the legislators started looking at, well, are these black women qualified? And then they decided that the black women were automatically qualified. It didn't matter if they went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law, whether they went to Harvard, whether they went to Yale. They felt that just because the color of our skin, that we were black, that we're not qualified to sit as judges, and that we were taking the position of good judges, and good judges being that of white judges. And then in 2018, in Harris County, when 19 African-American women were elected, they then worked to change the legislation. And, you know, this is part of systemic racism, and it occurs with the Dallas Bar Association also. Because the Dallas Bar Association knows that when they give low ratings to African-American judges, which they have across the board, every family law judge, juvenile judge, criminal judges, they've given low ratings. Because they know that then when they look to someone to go to the Supreme Court, like they have an opening Supreme Court or any appellate court, they're going to look at that and say, okay, they're not qualified, and they're going to justify why an African-American woman shouldn't be sitting there. So, you know, this is part of systemic racism, and it's unfortunate because we are just as qualified as anybody else to sit on that bench. And the ultimate gauge of whether we are qualified is the Judicial Conduct Commission, whether we've gotten complaints as to our conduct on the bench, and also the appellate court, whether they've reversed us on many cases because we don't know what we're doing. And that's not the case with the African-American judges.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Bailey?
Thank you. I believe that the influx of African-American women in the court system, it can be quite frightening. And let's dig a little deeper on that. It's not just about the systematic racism that we have seen occurred in numerous courtrooms across the United States, really, because a lot of black women have been getting elected. But let's also look at some of the things that take place on these benches. How are we as black women in these judicial seats conducting ourselves? Are we treating everyone fairly? Are we holding the courtroom with integrity? Are we mistreating any litigants, anything like that? So I do believe there is some accountability that needs to be taking place upon us as black women. We have to make sure that, first off, nobody is perfect. That I don't want to give that impression off at all. But we do have to do a self-reflection of ourselves because we are being, we are being judged based on the way that we treat people, not only in the community, but in the courtroom as well. So those are some things that we also have to take accountability for ourselves and make sure that we are doing our jobs, what we're supposed to do, applying the law fairly, and ensuring that justice takes place in the courtrooms across the United States and in Dallas County, because this is what our taxpayers need. Taxpayers, when they go out to vote, they're not just voting for someone because of the color of their skin. They want to make sure that that is the best qualified person, not just by experience. Experience matters, but it also matters how you treat people, judicial ratings, as well as how your colleagues view you. Currently, this court ranks number 57 out of 60 judges in Dallas County. If that does not alarm you as a taxpayer, I don't know what does, because it definitely is alarming to me. Thank you.
So, stay for this question. So what are should you be elected, what are the improvements or the changes you would make to improve efficiency in the court?
Thank you for that question, Mr. O'Neill. There are a number of things I said. As I stated earlier about the mental health disorders, people that suffer from those, there needs to be a resource provided in the courtroom to assist these people. A speech therapist, maybe someone who deals directly with people who suffer from mental health disorders, to help these people understand the importance of following a court order. That's the only way that we're going to ensure that they don't return to the courtroom for violating a court order. As I mentioned earlier, which I've already been in the process of working on, the clothing closet for indigent litigants. These people need to feel like they're not being judged based on what they're wearing in the courtroom, but what it is that they're actually saying on their case. They want to be heard. Mandatory counseling for these children. As you know, there is an epidemic of suicide rates across this country, and it's happening to our young people. If we're able to capture them in the most traumatic times of their lives, dealing with divorce cases and child custody cases, this will improve that for them. I also intend on having docket days. This court currently has the most backlog cases of 3,200 from the preceding month. We need to do something about that. Because of the pandemic, all courts have been streaming live in Dallas County. This court does not currently stream live. I believe this is important. The citizens of Dallas County, the taxpayers, deserve to see what is taking place in these courtrooms. How are litigants treated? What exactly is going on in terms of the application of the law? These are things that are extremely important, and I believe that I stand in solidarity with most of the taxpayers of Dallas County, and we would like to know this information. So again, I'm asking for your support to make these things happen and make changes to the 255th. Is definitely needed. Thank you.
Judge Cooks. If you're reelected, how will you, what are the things that you would do to improve efficiency in the court? The things that you plan to do?
Okay, well, to begin with, the court is efficient.
Yes, ma'am.
Already efficient.
Yes, ma'am.
And there is no backlog in the court. There's no backlog in the 255th court. There's no backlog in the protective order court, and I'm proud to say that. You know, we have worked throughout the pandemic, and there are two options. This is why experience matters. The Supreme Court of Texas has said there's two options, that you can be on YouTube or you can have your Zoom code on your website. My Zoom code is on the website for everyone to come see. The protective order court is live on YouTube. You can watch the protective order court there. So as far as efficiency, and before, even before I took the bench in 2015, you know, services were provided throughout the family court through mental health. And those are not services that, you know, they're already there. As they're there for psychiatric evaluations, psychological evaluations, parenting facilitators. They receive counseling. They receive, you know, job skills. They receive parenting classes. So all of those services are already there. That's why experience matters.
So, 2 minutes for a closing statement. And that's where we are in our program tonight, okay?
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for allowing me to be your judge of the 255th Family Court. I am asking for your support for re-election so we can continue to mend the broken families together. Approximately 20,000 cases have come through my court already, and we have mended the broken families. You can look at the appellate rates and see the overturn rates. You can look at to see if I've been reprimanded for my performance on the bench. None of those have occurred. So I am asking for your support for re-election, and so I also need your support so we can continue. When I took over protective order court in January, it wasn't a full and up and running court, and I made sure that it would be up and running and it could be fully staffed for all the domestic violence cases and for everyone who needs a protective order. We have partnered with UNT Law, and they have a clinic with their domestic violence class where they have law students so they can get experience and be in the courtroom and help these self-represented litigants as well as indigent people file their paperwork. We also have, in the family court, in 255th Family Court, we've partnered with SMU Law and UNT Law, where they also provide clinics, and they come to the courthouse, and they help people who are indigent and who cannot afford an attorney, who want to represent themselves with all the paperwork so they can maneuver through the court and get a result and get their disposition as needed. And one of the other things I pride myself on, when there's a trial in the court, you get your result immediately after the trial. So you have finality, and whatever services you need to go, that you're ordered to go to, you can start those services. I'm Judge Kim Cooks. Let's continue to mend the broken families together. Vote for me, show me love, February 14th.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Bailey?
As I stated to you, there are a number of changes that need to take place within the 255th Family Court. Just to name off a few of my endorsements: Commissioner John Wiley Price, the North Texas Asian Democrats, Dallas County Tejano Democrats, East Dallas Democrats, as well as the Stonewall Democrats of Dallas and Preston Hollow Democrats. All of these organizations would like to see change in the 255th Court, which is why I received their endorsements. I'm asking for your support so I can ensure that counseling is mandatory for children that are involved in the divorce cases as well as the child custody cases, and that there is family counseling that is also mandatory. I'm asking for your support to help me get that clothing closet open for indigent persons so they can feel confident when they are appearing in these courts. Because let's be honest, nobody wants to appear in family courts. I'm also asking for you to help me get these medical providers who can assist these people who suffer from mental health disorders, get the assistance that they need in the courtroom to help them in understanding these court orders. Again, mending the broken families begins with the reunification of the family. I don't know about any of you, but I'm still confused about what mending the broken families actually is from the platform that we just heard. I'm asking for your support and your vote starting on early voting. Early voting begins on February the 14th through the 25th. The primary election is March the 1st. I'm asking for your support to help implement these changes that should have occurred on yesterday in the Dallas County Family Court 255th. Again, thank you for your time. Vote Vonda.
And thank you both, challenger Vonda Bailey and incumbent Judge Kim Cooks for the 255th Judicial District. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mhm. We'll And welcome back to Monday Night Politics. Tonight we have with us candidate for District Judge, 282nd Judicial District here in North Texas. We have with us the incumbent, Judge Amber Givens. Other candidates in the race, Andy Chatham and Teresa Hawthorne, are not present with us tonight, so we'll go straight for our opening statements to Judge Givens.
All right, well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Amber Givens, and I currently serve you as the presiding judge of the 282nd Judicial District Court here in Dallas County, Texas. In 2014, when I stood before you and asked for your support, I told you that justice for all needed to be restored to the 282nd Judicial District Court. I also told you that the court needs to be more engaged with the public, and I made those promises, and I kept those promises. I'm the only candidate in this race that has created a program to reduce recidivism. I am the only candidate in this race that has created an educational awareness program. I am the only candidate in this in this race that has created a program to prevent the youth from being involved in the criminal justice system. I am the only candidate in this race that has never been reversed by a Texas higher court, an appellate court. So I have done the work by creating the programs and bridging the gap between the courthouse and the community. I believe in being proactive and not being reactive. And I also believe in deeds and not words. I have proven to you over the last 7 years that I meant business when I asked for your support in 2014. And I'd ask for your support again. Thank you.
What are the most pressing? You talk about recidivism. We know that's always a problem. We talk
Yes.
about the school to prison pipeline and those things. So how are you addressing those currently, and what are things that you plan to do going forward?
Okay, so regarding recidivism, so when I took office in 2015, I looked and I was trying to figure out who needed my help. And what I found was that people on felony probation needed my assistance. And it wasn't because they wanted to fail on felony probation, it was because they needed additional resources. Meeting with a probation officer once a month, if you don't have family support, if you have a drug addiction issue and you don't have adequate employment, is just not enough. So I created a 10-month supplemental felony probation program. No judge handed it down to me. No, the county hasn't paid for it. It comes out of my pocket. It's a program I've created where I partner people that are on felony probation that need additional assistance with people from the community to bridge that gap. Too often we see a separation between the community and the courthouse. With my program, we have doctors, lawyers, whomever that's willing to serve as a mentor. And we walk the probationers through a 10-month program where we handle, everyday matters like getting your driver's license reinstated, getting a copy of your social security card, teaching them how to write resumes and cover letters. And I'm able to do this because I partner with community organizations that give of their time and give their services. So, for example, the writing the resumes, oftentimes that costs $500 an hour to have someone do that with you. They donate those services. At the end of the 10-month program, they receive early release or judicial clemency, which is akin to like a pardon from the governor. And so about reducing recidivism, I believe making a program that's substantive, where you have contact with people on more than just a once-a-month basis, is key. Additionally, pipeline to prison, we all know that they're using third-grade reading scores to decide how many beds we need in prisons. And so I, along with 3 other colleagues, created a program, Pipeline of Possibilities, to disrupt that pipeline. And so we go into the DISD schools that have the highest rates of incarceration, and we teach the young children about the criminal justice system. So those are 2 actual ways that I have been fighting recidivism, and disrupting the pipeline between our schools and the prisons. And you asked me future plans. Okay, so Okay. And so you asked me about future plans. So I am going to rework my empowerment program. And when I say rework, so there's nothing, we've graduated over 200 people from the program successfully. And when I say that, it's gonna be the pay it forward edition. So we're gonna have people that have graduated previously come back and pour into those that are in the program themselves. So that's one addition that I'm going to make to my court. I'm also in the works with a nonprofit to provide free psych services. Now, we see a number of people when I get the evals from probation that things have happened to them in their lifetime and they haven't talked to anyone about them. And it creates a space where they find themselves continuously in the court system because they're not addressing the issues. So I'm working with a nonprofit to provide free psychological services to people that are on my probation. Additionally, I'm going to continue to work with State Representative Carl Sherman. I am on one of his committees, and what we do is propose legislation, and that's something that I'm going to continue to do.
Okay. You noted earlier that you've never been reversed, right?
Right.
And we talked in other other judicial races about this seeming, and I'll call it antipathy, but it's just real right-wing concern over the number of black female judges that have been elected in the state of Texas. What do you think about that?
Okay.
And wrap your closing statement into that.
Into that?
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Well, so I'm from Missouri, where judges are appointed by the governor. There is an organization that conducts a report every year called the Gavel Gap. What the Gavel Gap does is look at the diversity in the community versus the diversity on the bench. And Texas fails every year. Okay? And most states in the country fail because the community doesn't look like the bench. So I'll say that's a problem. And so if someone thinks that it's a problem that the community is starting to look like, or excuse me, the bench is starting to look like the community, I think it's probably a personal one. Because every year, I would say 50% based on that report that's conducted by a nonprofit are failing because there's not a lot of diversity on the bench. Now, with my closing, I would tell you that when I took office and when I actually was campaigning in 2014, I told you that I would not sit in this seat and just be comfortable. I told you that this wouldn't be about me sitting on the 282nd Judicial District's bench, that this would be about me being in a seat where I would do the work. And so I'll tell you that I submit to you that anyone that subscribes to the status quo will always be threatened by me. I submit to you that I have been sitting in this seat and I've had the audacity to not be silent. I've had the audacity to speak up when it was necessary, and not for public credit. I did it behind closed doors. It ended up being in the news, like in 2018 when I realized that police departments were cherry picking courts to get results that they wanted. Even though I got texts that said, you shouldn't go, you'll get opponents, I went anyway. Why? Because every individual, I don't care what crime you're accused of, you are entitled to a fair judiciary that has not been picked by a police department because they have a desired result. Also in 2020, after George Floyd's murder, we saw white attorneys in Dallas take to Facebook, and they called black people during the protest subhuman and animals. I've ruffled feathers, but I'm glad that I did. I created the first anti-discrimination policy in the country that addresses the fact that no matter what your socioeconomic status is, your gender, your race, your religion, and so on, you are entitled to counsel, because what the Constitution says is that if you can't afford to pay for your attorney, you don't get to pick your attorney. But we all know, as we undeniably have seen across the country, that enough is enough for status quo. I stand up against the status quo. I am here to disrupt the norm and make sure that justice and equality is really a reality for all people in Dallas. I'm going to ask for your support. I am in the middle on the ballot, so put on your blinders, focus on what's important, and vote for Amber Givens for the 282nd Judicial District Court. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Judge,
you.
The incumbent for the 282nd District Court, Judge Amber Givens. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the last of our judicial races will be District 204. And welcome back to Monday Night Politics. And tonight, in this particular segment, we have the candidates for district judge in the 204th District Court. And we have with us the incumbent, Judge Tammy Kemp, and the challenger, Ms. Bree West. So thank you. We'll go in alphabetical order. 2 minutes for opening statements. Judge Kemp, you're next.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you all very much for having me. I'm excited to say this is my third time here for Monday Night Politics. Each experience has been unique and dynamic, and I'm surprised and welcome to see how you are greeting us this evening. Thank you all to the creators of this format. I want to tell you that my name is Tammy Kemp. I currently serve as the judge of the 204th Judicial District Court. In 2014, when I was campaigning, I made promises to you. I told you that I would be accountable to the public. I've been that. I told you that I would be compassionate towards victims. I've been that. I told you that I would be fair to the accused. I've been that. I would like to continue serving as your judge in the 204th Judicial District Court. And let me tell you about some of the things that I've done during my time in this court. When I took over this court, it was dead last in efficiency and money spent in bringing cases to trial. The incumbent who sat on this seat was the most reverse judge in the county at that time, handling felony criminal courts. I took that court from the bottom to the top. We have consistently ranked among the most efficient, the most accountable, and having the most disposition of cases. That's been my joy and my pleasure to do that during these past 7 years. I've also served as the presiding judge over the felony courts. This is my second term, and I currently serve as the presiding judge of the felony domestic violence court. I've kept my promises to you. I've been efficient, I've been economical, and most importantly, I've been professional, knowledgeable, and I have yet to be reversed in any of the criminal trials that we've had, be they in front of a jury or in front of a judge. I pride myself on knowing the law, being prepared, and being ready to serve. Please continue to keep me as the judge of the 204th. Thank you.
Ms. West, opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bree West, and I'm running for the 204th Judicial District Court in Dallas County, Texas. Thanks so much for listening and tuning in. I've been both a prosecutor and defense attorney for more than 10 years in Dallas County, primarily serving indigent defendants. That means people that can't go into the free market and hire their own attorney. I represent clients currently in my defense practice in state, federal, and federal appellate court. These experiences have made it so that I have a very unique perspective as it relates to our criminal justice system and the ways in which our criminal justice system is broken from the inside. What I intend to do for Dallas County is to bring balance back to the bench, to ensure that we have competence, fairness, and integrity in the judge that's sitting on the bench in the 204th Judicial District Court. Somebody that understands the importance of the issues that we're facing, the issues related to bail and bond reform, the issues related to people that are suffering with mental health issues and substance abuse issues, the ability for those people to have access to the courts that they're eligible for that will help them be successful and reintegrate into our communities in a safe way for them and for everybody else. I understand the need to ensure that we expand our ability to provide those types of services. It makes our community better for everyone. What I intend to do when elected to be the next judge of the 204th Judicial District Court is to make sure that each person that comes before me, whether you are a lawyer, a citizen accused, or a victim, that you have the ability, the time, and the access to be able to be heard, to have your questions answered, and to have the access to the court that you deserve. It does not matter what you've been accused of as a citizen, and it doesn't matter what you have experienced as a victim. You deserve to be able to walk into the 204th and have a judge that'll listen. Thank you so much. I look forward to your vote.
And stay there for the next question, Ms. West. Let's expand on that. You mentioned some things that you'd like to do differently than are currently being done. Can you kind of expand on that?
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. Currently in the 204th Judicial District Court, we need to have a judge that is accessible and that is fair, balanced, and competent. What we need to ensure is that that person has experience on both sides, because having experience on both sides helps you understand what your role is. But if you've only had experience on one side, then I think that we can all understand that you, despite how fair you may think you're being, are going to be biased towards one side or the other. What I bring to the bench is the assurity that I understand what it means for a prosecutor to do a really good job, to seek justice in the way that a prosecutor should seek justice for the state of Texas. But I also very much understand the incredible disadvantage that exists for a citizen that is accused of a criminal offense, the lack of access to resources that helps them defend their positions. You have to have somebody that's sitting on the bench that understands both sides of that. So one of the most important things that I would do is bring that with me on day one. Additionally, I understand that we have a tremendous lack of access to resources as it relates to people that are suffering with mental health conditions, people that are suffering with substance abuse. It is not something that we need to punish as it relates to being in prison. It's something that we need to treat as best as we can. There are many, many specialty programs that exist in Dallas County for people that suffer with those types of issues. But there's not enough room. There's not enough funding. So one of the big things that I intend to do is to not just leave things where they are and say, well, this is how they've been done and this is what we do. No, we've got to expand those programs. We have to advocate for the funding to ensure that we can expand those programs for the people that are eligible so that they can have access and room to have their cases addressed in a way that addresses the things that they're experiencing. So that's another thing that I intend to do on day one as I walk into the 204th Judicial District Court.
Judge Kemp, that's your court, right? so tell us about the functioning of your court, how it is delivering for the citizens that come before you.
Thank you. I do preside over the 204th Judicial District Court, and I am well familiar with both sides of the bench. I'm familiar with being a prosecutor. I served as a prosecutor here in Dallas County under Judge Vance, under Bill Hill, and under Craig Watkins. I tried every manner of case from the lowest misdemeanor to the highest capital murder cases, including, I'm sorry to say, a death penalty case. Not sorry that I prosecuted it, but sorry that it had to be done. I also have worked as a defense attorney for approximately 7 years. I know both sides of the aisle. And more than that, I have members of my family, friends, and community members who have been involved in the criminal justice system. I have served fairly, equitably, justly, and compassionately as the judge of the 204th. We have designed programs during this pandemic to ensure that those persons that don't have to be in jail are not in jail. When the pandemic hit in March of 2020, as the presiding judge, I came to my fellow judges and said, let's cease jury trials. It's going to create a hardship on some persons, but we can't risk the lives of the citizens. Let's open our jails to all the nonviolent offenders, even those that are awaiting drug treatment. I would rather they be safe in their homes than to contract COVID and possibly die. No one knows who COVID is going to impact. In my court, every person that is in jail has a weekly docket setting. I ensure that the prosecution is gathering discovery and providing it to the defense. I ensure that the defense attorneys are communicating the offers, the issues, and the things that need to be investigated. I ensure that investigators are appointed. I ensure that mental health evaluations are done. I ensure that psych evaluations are done, so that not only do we want to keep the community safe, we want to provide safety and the exercise of every constitutional right and privilege that an accused person has. We've been fair, we've been equitable, we've been just, and we've done it with compassion. Thank you.
Very good. So stay here for this final question and roll it into, if you will, if you don't mind, roll it into your closing statements. We've asked other candidates in judicial races to weigh in, just at least give it, not an opinion, but weigh in on the legislature's seeming animosity toward this, the presence of black female judges in recent election seasons. So that has been a concern, and it almost went into real legislation this past legislative session. And so kind of address that and roll that into your closing statement.
Okay. It is no secret that the vast majority of persons that I deal with in the criminal justice court, my felony court, are persons of color. It is no secret that all parties that enter into my courtroom feel some sense of relief and fairness, and if not anything else but a cultural understanding that I can understand and appreciate their circumstance. You know, no one had anything to say when all 33 judges in Dallas County happened to be Caucasian. No one saw any need to alleviate that system. But when we became experienced, when we became acknowledgeable, when we became professional, when we sought to make change, when we exercised our right to vote, then suddenly they want to change the game. It's the very reason why this democracy sits on the precipice of destruction. We don't seek to mistreat anyone. As an African American female, I resent the fact that someone thinks because of the color of my skin, I cannot mete out justice fairly. I took an oath to uphold the Constitution of this United States and the great state of Texas, and to enforce all the laws and statutes fairly, equitably, and justly. I've done that. And to seek to have me to remove because I am holding up the morals, the convictions, and the hope of this country is inherently wrong, and we will continue to fight and to vote and to deny that. I am more than qualified to serve in this position. I have not been reversed on any case that I presided over. And that's not because I'm black. It's because I'm professional, knowledgeable, experienced, and I cut my teeth in the criminal court system. And I resent that for all of my people. Thurgood Marshall said, a black snake and a white snake are the same. They are a snake. A good judge, be they black, white, Hispanic, Asian, is a good judge. We've got to vote. We need a new governor. I'm glad he sits here tonight. We need a new attorney general. I saw him earlier tonight. We need a new lieutenant governor. We will make change in Texas. Please vote. Vote Tammy Kim, March 1st, and from Valentine's Day through February 25th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. West?
I know you don't have that.
Don't worry about it. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. Thank you. Thank you. Here are some hard truths. Not all judges are created equal. Not all judges do a good job. Not all judges understand our criminal justice system. And there are judges that punish for the sake of punishment. The point of the legislation that you were discussing, sir, was to limit the way in which criminal justice reform can happen in our country. Because the reality of the situation is that it's black and brown people that populate our criminal justice system, and therefore there should be African American or black and brown judges that sit before those citizens that are accused. That's the hard truth. The reality of the situation is the color of my skin or anybody else's skin has absolutely no bearing on whether they can do a good job. It has no bearing on whether they can do a good job. The reality is there are judges that just don't do a good job. And that is where you as voters come in. It doesn't have anything to do with legislating anything, capping people, years of experience, whatever the discussion was. It has to do with you, the voter. This is the time, this is the opportunity for you to educate yourself on what it what is required for somebody to sit on these benches in Dallas County? What is it that you want to see if you or your loved one has to come into contact with the criminal justice system? Who do you want sitting on that bench? Do you want a person that has 10 plus years of experience in Dallas County representing people both as in state, federal, and federal appellate court, somebody that has experience as a prosecutor, that has occurred over the last 10 years, that has represented people over the last 10 years here in Dallas County? Do you want somebody that understands the issues that we are facing as a community related to bail and bond reform? Do you want somebody that understands the issues that we face with substance abuse and mental health issues? If you want that, educate yourself on Bree West. That's what we need to have happen here in Dallas County. That not what the legislature is trying to do. So please go visit my website, learn about what I'm doing, learn about my experience, and vote on February 14th. Vote for Bree West for judge. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bree West, challenger for 204th Judicial District, and the incumbent Judge Tammy Kemp. Thank you so much for your attendance tonight. And welcome back to this edition of Monday Night Politics. And we are here at the race for governor for the state of Texas. We have two of the four Democratic challengers for the seat. We have with us Mr. Beto O'Rourke and Mr. Mike Collier here with us tonight. We're going to go. I'm looking right at it. I'm looking right at it. Apologize. And we will go in alphabetical order, as I noted, and we'll have 2 minutes for opening statements and 2 minutes for responses. So, Mr. Cooper, you're first.
Thank you. For the record again, the name is Michael Cooper, and I am a candidate for governor of this great state of Texas. All my life, I've had to fight. A lot of people don't understand what that means. When you're African American, grow up in Southeast Texas like I did, I had to fight for recognition, position, and then I had to maintain that. And in the automotive industry, I fought for those positions. I fought to make millionaires multiple millionaires. Once they saw the talent and they saw the fight in me, they realized that not only one group of people, but multiple groups of people can do the job. And that's what I've been fighting for. I've been fighting for your rights. You know what I told my kids what you need to do with a bully? You push back and say no. And we have a bully right now in the governor's mansion. And we're saying no to him. We're saying no to him and all the things that he has done when it comes to voter suppression, calling special sessions, letting horrible bills come through. 666 bills. I was fighting for your rights. Back February 2nd, 2021, I made up my mind, and I had a made-up mind to fight for your rights. I fought against voter suppression from Beaumont, Texas, to Austin, Texas, to Washington, D.C., where I was arrested for women's rights. That's right. There's a thing called a heartbeat bill, and I fought against that, and I was arrested for that. Came back to Beaumont and told everybody we have a fight on our hand, we have a snake in the grass, and we have to take their head down. And that's how we do it. That's the reason why a lot of my folks in Beaumont, Texas say, well, why not go to school board? Why not become a city council? Why not become a mayor? We don't have time. Time is at hand right now, and we need somebody who's going to show up and fight a bully. I became the president of Southeast Texas Toyota Dealers Association, and guess what? I maintained and got the naming right to the Toyota Center. It is where the Houston Rockets play. We need somebody that's going to think outside the line. We need somebody that's innovative, motivated, and ready to go. My name is Michael Cooper. I am your candidate for governor of this great state of Texas.
Thank you so much. Mr. O'Rourke.
My name is Beto O'Rourke, and it is a huge honor to be with you tonight. I want to thank Mr. Charles O'Neill and Ms. Molly Belt, and Mr. Cooper, and everyone who is here and everyone who's watching online right now, because there could not be a more important moment for the future of this state. And it is a moment in which we cannot be found wanting. All of us doing all we can to make sure that we overcome the challenges that we face right now in this state. We have a governor who's taken us to the far extreme end of his party, banning reproductive health care decisions for the women of this state, ignoring police officers and sheriff's deputies, and signing a permitless carry bill that allows anyone to carry a loaded firearm in public in this state, and ignoring the most important issues in front of us, like making sure that we can keep the lights on and that this electricity grid in the power generating capital of North America actually works and works for everyone. If we can get past him, win this race, then there's no stopping the good things that we can do for one another, like making sure that the best jobs in the United States of America are created right here in the state of Texas, that we focus on making sure that our public schools are world class, and regardless of your zip code, your income, or any differences between us, you have the best chances at the best outcomes in your life. And then moving forward on common sense solutions that Republicans, Democrats, independents, people all across the state of Texas can agree on, like making sure that we expand Medicaid so that more people can see a doctor, we bring more money into our communities, and we lower our property tax bills, or legalizing marijuana so that we no longer put people behind bars for possession of a substance that is already legal in most of the rest of this country. We can do these great things if we win this incredibly important election, and I'm here today to ask for your support and your vote in this effort.
Mr. O'Rourke, you take the first question. This one is personal to me because Texas has the largest black population among the 50 states. and we have a governor and a legislature, a state government, that appears to not only disregard us, but to work actively against my interests. How do we change that, and how will you change?
You're absolutely right in the description of the problem, and there's so many different areas that we can point to right now and measure the consequence and the cost of a governor who is working against his own people. Right here in the state of Texas, we're at the epicenter of a maternal mortality crisis that is 3 times as deadly for black women in the state of Texas. Now, it didn't just happen this past year. It's been going on ever since Greg Abbott has become governor. As more reproductive health care clinics close, it is harder not only to get an abortion, but it's harder to get a cervical cancer screening or reproductive health care help or to see a doctor of any kind. And that's why we're losing people in this state faster than almost anywhere else. It's also in Texas where in a kindergarten classroom, a black child is 5 times as likely to be punished, suspended, or expelled as a white child for the same infractions in front of the same teacher. That school to prison pipeline that we so often hear about begins not in high school or middle school, but when those kids are 5 years old and absolutely defenseless against the systemic racism that we still have, not just in our criminal justice system, but all too often in our systems of education. We need to understand these issues so that we can correct them, so that we can overturn the governor's ban on reproductive health care, for example, and focus on that maternal mortality crisis to help the women of Texas survive and to thrive going forward. We need to make sure that there's not just equality but equity in our classrooms, and we need to specifically look at what it will take to hire more black men to be in those classrooms so that there's representation in every part of public life in this state. And lastly, we need to make sure that state resources in this 9th economy on planet Earth flow everywhere in this state, and that we create opportunity not just where opportunity has always been, but precisely where it has been found wanting. That's how we see the greatest growth and equal opportunity for all in the state of Texas going forward.
Mr. Cooper. Same question.
All right, great. Well, it's amazing. My daughter, she proposed this statement to me when you're talking about black lives. And I wasn't even familiar with Black Lives Matter back when George Floyd was killed, murdered in front of plain daylight. Well, I was invited to speak in Vidor, Texas, where we all know is known as a sundown town. If you're from Dallas, you've probably driven that way to go to Louisiana. I stood on the stage where they burned a cross late 90s. In 1992, you can Google on CNN, they said if a black man is walking down the street in Vidor, Texas, we will kill him. That was said. But you can also Google and you'll find Michael Cooper going to a place where he's not welcome, was not welcome, and they say, this is a setup, don't go there. Don't go there, they're gonna kill you, they're gonna assassinate you in broad daylight. And because of that, I went anyway. I went because black lives really do matter. Why is that? Because I happen to be a black man that grew up in this skin, and I'm comfortable in it. And I learned how to work with other folks that don't look like me, so that means that I know how to get things done with Anglo-Republican men that's running the great state of Texas right now. They have a heart, but we just need to penetrate that heart. We need to go there and show love first. And that's what I did in Vidor, Texas. And I stood on the stage and the man challenged me. He said, but my life mattered too. I said, but my daughter told me to tell you this, that when my house is on fire, that you better make sure that you call the fire department for my house. And right now, my people, we're on fire right now. It's not just the women that's dying after they give birth in the state of Texas. It's not just men. It's all of us right now. Black and brown people, we're in trouble. Poor people, we partner with the Poor People Campaign to bring attention to all people with that lives that matter right now. And I told that Anglo man, I said, listen, your life does matter, but right now, don't get mad at me because my house is on fire. And I'm here right now to let you know that my name is Michael Cooper. I'm going to fight to put your fire out.
Stay here for this question that's kind of a follow-up to that, because one of the things that's most disappointing to me, most disturbing to me is while all of these attacks on my rights are going on, I'm being asked to pay for that government to abuse me, so to speak. One of the things I do in my other hat is I work for black business owners in the state of Texas. in our state government, after 40 years of enabling legislation, manages somehow to spend 1% of its procurement, goods and services, with black-owned businesses. I think that's criminal. So what would you do to address this glaring disparity in our presence in the population, our presence in ready, willing, and able businesses ready present themselves to do business with our state, and our results after 40 years of legislation to cure that problem? We're at 1%.
Brother Charles, it's amazing that you asked that question. It's almost like you wrote it for me. I work with the Black Chambers in Southeast Texas, which is also in Harris County. I work with my local chambers. I'm also on the diversity for the chambers. I have many hats, you know. There's so many backgrounds that I have, master's in psychology, working on a PhD. But I never sleep but 4.5 hours a night because I'm up thinking about those kind of things, Brother Charles. And so what I've been working with is some of those chambers leaders to make sure that they, and you're probably familiar with this, is that they are certified DBE ready, because there's Build Back Better money that's coming down, $1.9 trillion coming down. And if we do not have African American companies in position ready to receive that money is going to be marked and earmarked for someone else. There's a new minority out there, and I'm okay with Hispanics, I'm okay with females, but there's still African American minority groups. Matter of fact, I'm from the automotive industry. In 2006, there was an issue where President Obama and all of them, they had to bail out General Motors, they had to bail out Chrysler, but there were some companies they didn't have to bail out. I worked for both of those companies, Toyota and Ford. We did good business, but we had to bail them out. But nobody bailed out the minority black man and woman that had a automotive business in the state of Texas. I'm sorry, not just state of Texas. In the United States, there were 800. Now we're down to 300. Now they're building those dealerships back, and those dealerships are not coming back as African-American dealerships. They're just known as a different form of minority. Let me be clear on this, is that we need to train our people right now, make them ready to receive the Build Back Better money in the state of Texas. And if we don't have them DBE certified and ready to go, we're going to miss that money, and they're going to rewrite the way that they disperse the money. So I'm telling you right now, you need to recoup your businesses and your paychecks with COOP.
Thanks so much. Mr. O'Rourke, same question.
I'd like to build on what Mr. Cooper just said, because so much of it made so much sense to me. We have to make sure that we're ready for these opportunities when they come through. We also have to make sure that we're cognizant of the problem in the first place. And you pointed out, Mr. O'Neill, that we're spending less than 1% on businesses that should be just as competitive as any other business in the state of Texas, a state government which spends more than $120 billion a year throughout this state. It is creating wealth and opportunity and jobs in the process. Let's make sure that those are distributed throughout the state. Again, regardless of your income, regardless of any other difference between us, that is clearly not happening right now. I had the chance recently to talk to the county judge of Fort Bend County, KP George. He is the first non-Anglo elected to that position in the history of Fort Bend County. And he's making sure that there are opportunities now for one of the most diverse counties in the United States of America. And it begins with a disparity study so that we understand where county money is being spent in Fort Bend. Let's use that model in the state of Texas and really make sure that we understand, measure, and quantify the problem so that we can fix it going forward. Like Mr. Cooper, I want to make sure that independent mom and pop business owners have every opportunity to compete, to succeed, and to create more jobs in their community. And to also acknowledge the fact that there's been a structure in Texas in place for a long time that has helped some at the expense of others. And as Mr. O'Neill says, all of us pay taxes and support that system. Let's make sure that that system supports and creates opportunity for everyone in the state of Texas. Last thing, I do want to make sure, as I echo again Mr. Cooper's comments about voting rights, that when we talk about our government and how our government spends, that everyone has an equal opportunity to choose who that government is and who represents them and how their voice will be heard. Voting rights is connected to economic rights. That's why it's also a priority of mine in this campaign.
And I'll set this one up and just give you a good chance to just punch the incumbent again, because about 3 weeks ago, Governor Abbott sent a letter to every agency head, 164, I think, state agencies, directing them not to apply for federal funds. You referenced Build Back Better, because federal funds come with strings attached with them. I heard that as federal funds must be distributed fairly. And he is saying, let's not do that. That's crazy, because it's not that we're getting money from the federal government, it's money that's returned to the state of Texas. How do you put that into someplace that makes sense?
This rejection of federal funds that, as Mr. O'Neill said, are our funds to begin with. We are all federal taxpayers. We've all paid into that. This is money that is being distributed across the country and is being refused right now by our governor. These are resources that could go into our schools, they could fix our bridges, they could extend broadband in big cities and rural communities alike. And we are either sitting on it or rejecting it wholesale. And this is not an anomaly. This is the pattern and practice of this governor so far. For example, Governor Abbott has left $100 billion of Medicaid expansion money on the table, refusing to take yes for an answer, especially at a time where initially the federal government was going to pay 100 cents on the dollar of expansion, then 95 cents. The current offer is 90 cents. Still pretty good. If that money were to come into Dallas County, for example, it could add hundreds of millions of dollars to the local economy, connect more doctors with patients, ensure that we no longer have people dying of diabetes, of the flu, and curable cancers here in the wealthiest, most powerful country in the world in the 21st century. And it could also lower property taxes, because we'll no longer have to fund uncompensated care at the county hospital district level. This is not about Democrats. This is just common sense. And because the governor will not follow it, he is hurting the people of this state. His incompetence in this case, his corruption when it came to the grid, his inability to meet the deadliest pandemic of the last 102 years has made Greg Abbott one of the leading causes of death in the state of Texas right now. It is urgent that we change course and that we replace this person in this position of power and public trust with someone who will focus on the well-being of every Texan. And where we have an opportunity to draw down dollars and partnerships, including and maybe especially from the federal government, let's take that opportunity.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Cooper, same question.
Same question.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's amazing. We have a governor that has decided to give back hundreds of millions of dollars to the spend because he didn't see fit to give it to African American communities to keep people assisting with renters assistance, keep the lights on. He can care less because he has friends that's escaping the state of Texas going somewhere else. But that's a whole nother statement. So we need to make sure that we hold him accountable by electing him out of the seat this term. We need to make sure that we say no to bullets. We need to push back and say we need our money here in the state of Texas. Matter of fact, where I'm from in Port Arthur, Texas, I'm from Beaumont, Texas actually, but 18 miles up the street, Port Arthur, Texas, he kept $5 million of money from that area because the superintendent, the mayor decided to put masks on, have mandates, get vaccinations to open up schools. But we have a bully that is just pushing us around in the state of Texas, especially African American people. Up here in Dallas, you know something about what he did. He showed you that he did not care about you because he appointed a guy from your school board here in Dallas, Texas. Let me give you his name, Mike Morath. He's your education commissioner. And he has failed the state of Texas. We're 47 out of 48 right now. How in the world can we be big bag Texas? Don't mess with Texas. But he's messing up our education system. We have an issue in Texas. His name is Greg Abbott. He must go. Boy, I wish you were in this room with me right now. I feel a chant coming on. He must go. Greg Abbott must go. There's some people in here chanting with me. But anyway, I'm going to leave them alone. I need your help. My name is Michael Cooper.
Last question, we're going to roll this into your closing statement. Top priorities, should you be elected? Top priorities upon assuming office and then roll into your closing statement.
Thank you for that. Right now, my platform is education. A vote for Michael Cooper is a vote for your children, a vote for yourself, and for all Texans. Y'all, I happen to be African American, but at the same time, I represented everybody. I grew up in the South. You have to. You can't just represent one group, because I'm a minority for sure in the South. So at the same time, we need to make sure we push education forward. We need to grow our own school teachers. We need to make sure that they have a livable wage. If you divide, my wife is a retired school teacher. She's here with me today, had a stroke, TIAs, everything else. 27 years, she had to sit it down. We struggled for a while, but that's okay, because our children are worth it. The education system is where we need to put all of our focus at, and we need to give the attention to it. Listen, some people might say, well, who is this guy? Where does he come from? I'm glad you asked that question. I've been living for 56 years, and 35 of those years, I have been fighting for the folks in Southeast Texas as a civil rights worker, as president of NAACP. I wear several hats: pastor, giving out food, taking care of the homeless, giving out water. I don't always put it on camera, but we do the work. That's what we need to do. Education is key. Grow our own school teachers and make sure that they go to a state-funded school, hopefully HBCU school also. We need to give funding to our schools, our HBCU schools. We can't fail with those schools. The other thing we need to do is make sure that we have the expansion of Medicaid and have a program for that. Inbox me at www.cooper2022.com, because I have more details. 34 seconds will not cut it, because that's how much time I have left. Because I need to talk to you about making sure that we have medical insurance in the state of Texas. There's some places in the state of Texas, they're doing it right. But I want to make sure that we do it for all Texans. When's the last time you've been to a fancy restaurant? You saw a menu. Well, guess what? When you go to ER, they don't show you a menu. You get it 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, and you find out you spent $70,000. And you said, man, if I'd known that scalpel was $10,000, I would have asked you to bring it home, because you know that you do it when you go to the hotel. Some of you got the towels. My name is Michael Cooper. I'm out of time.
Thank you so much. Mr. O'Rourke. And the question was top priorities, should you be elected, and the closing statement.
One of the last times that I saw Michael Cooper was walking from Georgetown, Texas to Austin, Texas to march for, walk for, call attention to the need for voting rights in this state. We are the hardest state in the country in which to cast a ballot. Now that's not right. It's not right for Democrats. It's not right for independents. It's not right for Republicans. There are men and women who have given their lives for this democracy in uniform, storming the beaches of Normandy, 1944, fighting fascism to protect democracy at home. There are men and women who marched for it in the 50s and 60s at the risk of their own lives, and some lost their lives to push the Texas president, LBJ, to sign the Voting Rights Act of 1965 into law. We are coming very close to losing that, which so many have served and sacrificed to obtain in the first place. I want to make sure that in Texas, if you are a citizen and you are eligible, there is no obstacle in your way to casting that ballot and having a voice in this democracy and deciding who it is that represents you. Because I'm confident that if we do that, then the big priorities of this state, I agree with Mr. Cooper on public education and getting behind those public school educators, that we become #1 in the nation for the quality of public schools. That we ensure that the best jobs created in America are found right here in the state of Texas, and everyone has a chance to compete for them. And that we move forward on the things that make all the common sense in the world, that don't need to divide us or keep us polarized or pitted against each other, like expanding Medicaid so that people can see a doctor and be well enough to pursue their potential. These are the things that we can do if we choose to come together. And that is why I'm asking for your support, your help, your vote, and your willingness to volunteer to make sure that we can win this election, take on Greg Abbott, defeat him, and get this state on the right track. Thank you very much, and thank you again to Mr. O'Neill and to Ms. Molly Belt and to Mr. Cooper.
Thank you so much. Our candidates for governor of the state of Texas, Mr. Michael Cooper, Mr. Beto O'Rourke. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Monday Night Politics. We look to see you next Monday, Valentine's Day. We understand that it's Valentine's Day, but come out and show some love to your candidates running to support you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.